Content warning. The story, characters, and events in this book are entirely fictional. Any similarities to actual people, places, and events are purely coincidental. This story contains heavy violence, strong language, and sexual themes that may not be suitable for all audiences. Listener discretion is advised.
Apricot spent the night tangled in her sheets, trapped in a liminal space between sleep and waking. Her eyes, squeezed shut, couldn't block out the whispers that gnawed at her sanity. These voices weren't just in her head. They slithered through the cracks in the walls, rose from the floorboards, and wove themselves into the very air of her room. What had once been a sanctuary now felt like a detached pocket of reality, drifting in a void where dark things lurked just beyond the reach of light. Shadows shifted unnaturally, casting grotesque silhouettes that seemed to pulse with life. Every time she cracked her eyes open, the sensation of being watched intensified, a crawling certainty that something, or someone, was there. A cold, sick dread curled in her stomach, as if invisible fingers had latched onto her sheets, slowly creeping up her legs with icy precision. In her dreams, darkness deepened into a chasm, from which a ruined city clawed its way into existence, a place where geometry twisted and logic fractured. Doors led nowhere, walls yawned open in impossible ways, and metal rods jutted out of leaning towers like broken bones. Within this vortex of chaos, the air thrummed with the presence of countless creatures, their eyes glowing in the shadows, their forms flickering like twisted reflections in a broken mirror. They whispered to a king unseen, speaking of an inevitable crossing into her world. Apricot felt their gaze pierce her soul, and a voice, colder than the void, whispered from within her, "These are not dreams. They are real, lurking just beyond the fragile veil of sleep." "Quite the daredevil, aren't we, Apricot?" Miss Akagi's voice lashed through the stillness of the lecture hall like a whip, yanking Apricot out of her spiraling thoughts. She stiffened, her muscles tightening as the instructor's words echoed off the cold walls, undoubtedly reaching ears beyond the room. Miss Akagi's fingers sliced through the air with surgical precision, her eyes locking onto Apricot with a gaze that could shatter glass. "You're here to report the news, not become part of it." The paper in her hand crinkled under her grip, and she adjusted her glasses with deliberate, measured movements, but the tension in the room was palpable, like the air before a storm. The silence that followed was unbearable, stretching out like a taut wire. Apricot's nails dug into her thigh, an unconscious attempt to ground herself in the moment. Miss Akagi exhaled sharply, the sound laced with a mixture of disapproval and something else, something almost predatory. "However," she continued, her tone softening to a deadly purr, "I must admit your work is captivating." She began to pace, the paper still clutched in her hand like a trophy. "If it weren't for your little stunt, this could easily pass as the opening chapter of a novel. But trespassing at a crime scene is a serious offense, Missy." Each word hit like a hammer, driving the point home. "Expulsion would be within my rights," she added, her voice tightening to a razor's edge. "But students with your nerve are rare. Consider this your one and only reprieve." She arched an eyebrow, a final chilling warning. "The ministry has granted me the discretion to determine your punishment. Step out of line again and you'll lose your state license, and with it, any hope of a career in journalism." "Yes, ma'am," Apricot whispered, the weight of her mistake pressing down on her like a physical burden. "Good. Now, let's talk about your paper." Apricot looked up, her face a carefully composed mask of calm, though beneath it, relief and anxiety waged war. She had narrowly escaped disaster. "For a junior journalist, it's thrilling work. It would be a waste to let it gather dust, wouldn't it, Miss Apricot? I might just be able to pitch it to a real journal." "A journal?" The words slipped out before Apricot could stop them, her excitement breaking through her composure. "You mean like a state paper?" Akagi's lips curled into a smirk, the expression as sharp as a knife. No, she replied, a soft chuckle slipping through laced with condescension. Not a state paper, nor even an undergraduate journal. This piece is more suited to an independent publication. A weekly. Would you be willing to part with it? I might be able to publish it for you. Sell you my story? Apricot was nearly breathless. I'd love to. Good, good. Akagi's voice took on a sing-song quality as she leafed through the pages. Keep up this level of work, and you just might pass, assuming you remember to show up to class. Yes, ma'am. Apricot nodded, feeling the heat rise in her cheeks. The city buzzed with the sharp tones of jingles and the electric glow of flashing holograms, advertisements that assaulted the senses at every turn. The downtown metroplex thrummed with life, the streets pulsating with the energy of countless people moving in all directions. Apricot weaved through the crowd with her friends, her thoughts a chaotic swirl, carried along by the adrenaline of the day's adventures. They had spent the afternoon drifting from shop window to shop window, savoring the smoky flavors of grilled chicken skewers from Urudo Chifu, and racing carts with wild, reckless abandon. As the glass elevator ascended, lifting them high above the city, her friends' voices faded into the background, drowned out by the panoramic view that stretched out below, a jungle of metal and glass, seemingly endless. The locals called it the Big Tower, the city's largest elevator, a monolithic structure housing thousands of businesses and serving as the nerve center of Okabe's government. Normally, this view filled Apricot with awe, but today, a gnawing unease had taken root. The city below, with its towering structures and labyrinthine streets, felt more like a trap than a familiar place, a maze of shadows where unseen dangers lurked just out of sight. Her thoughts twisted into dark possibilities, something ancient and monstrous, something beyond human understanding, could be hiding in the crevices of this modern world. The very idea sent a shiver crawling down her spine. Without thinking, she began to pick at her nails, her teeth tearing at the edges until the once smooth surfaces were ragged and uneven. She forced herself back to the present, her eyes finding Solène, her longtime friend. Solène's effortless style always drew admiration, and today was no different. She wore a blue sleeveless hoodie with crisp white stripes paired with a black shirt beneath it, the logo just peeking out. Apricot often envied Solène's sense of fashion, though Solène herself never seemed to notice. Despite her petite frame, it was hard to reconcile that this was the same Solène who held the authority of an officer. Her boyfriend, Arjun, an Arslan immigrant from Stezel, wrapped her in his powerful arms with the ease of someone cradling a doll. His name suited him. Arjun was as strong and solid as a bear. Apricot's thoughts darkened once more, recalling the grim stories Arjun had shared about life under Stezel's iron rule. Her own research had painted a picture of a place steeped in fear and repression, and it was hard not to see echoes of that creeping into Okabe's future. Her heart ached with a longing for Castor, a place she had never known but felt deeply connected to. Her gaze drifted back to the bustling streets below, her thoughts a tangled mix of dread and yearning. So far away, she mused silently. What do you think, Apricot? Solène's voice broke through, pulling her back to reality. Apricot's heart skipped a beat. She hadn't been paying attention, and a flicker of panic sparked in her chest. She opted for honesty. It's scary, she admitted, her voice barely a whisper. Machi, ever blunt, twisted her face in confusion. Huh? What's scary? It's not that. It's just that we're so high up. What if a bird flew into the tube? The pressure would pull us out and we'd plummet to our deaths. Apricot tore her gaze away from the window, her eyes meeting Arjun's amused smirk and Solène's concerned frown. Apricot, are you serious? Who even thinks like that? Machi shot back, her disbelief clear. "Oh, sorry, Apricot mumbled, shrinking under Machi's sharp glare. "Don't worry, I feel the same way. Always do on these things. It's a mile up at least, right?" Arjun's accent thickened as he spoke, the quirks of his speech more charming than confusing. He always replaced "thee" with "z", and his verbs often twisted in ways that were oddly endearing. "The distance isn't even half a mile," Machi huffed, slamming her arms down in frustration. "Stop saying things like that. I don't need that kind of stress." Apricot couldn't help but snicker, and soon Arjun and Selene joined in, leaving Machi staring at them in stunned disbelief. "You're all horrible people." The dim alleyway echoed with the ominous rhythm of footsteps, the sound bouncing off the narrow walls, amplifying the sense of impending doom. "Damn it, they can't keep doing this," a man's voice muttered from the shadows. Apricot flinched as Machi clung tighter to her arm. The tension in the theater was thick, the audience transfixed by the large silver screen, where a semi-holographic display brought the scene to life with unnerving realism. Apricot nibbled on her popcorn, each crunch loud in her own ears. Why did theaters serve such noisy snacks? Popcorn and crinkling candy wrappers shattered the silence, almost as if the noise was designed to disrupt the movie's spell. The camera's focus tightened on the man's back, following him down a long, dark alley where shadows devoured the light, each step swallowed by the encroaching darkness. The screen filled with a close-up of his shoes, the ominous click of each step reverberating through the room like a heartbeat. Apricot tensed, bracing herself for the inevitable jump scare. She glanced sideways at Machi, whose face was pale as death, her nails digging into Apricot's arm with a force that spoke of primal fear. "Titobe? Is that you?" The young man's voice trembled, the fear tangible. As he ventured deeper into the darkness, the man halted abruptly. "Thank God, Tobey." From the shadows emerged a grinning face. Tobey's eyes were disturbingly elongated, like the writhing bodies of tapeworms. His mouth gaped open just as the young man screamed, Tobey's monstrous visage latching onto him with sickening inevitability. Machi's scream cut through the tension like a blade, louder than the movie itself, triggering a chain reaction of startled cries throughout the theater. Apricot felt the hairs on her neck rise. When Machi realized the attention she'd drawn, she shrank back into her seat, her cheeks flushing with embarrassment. "Sorry," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Apricot couldn't help but smile, patting Machi's hand in reassurance. Amidst the cacophony of arcade sounds, Arjun's voice rose in playful mockery. "Gee, Machi, you nearly gave me a heart attack with that scream. Made the whole movie 10 times scarier." He leaned casually against a machine designed to mimic a fighter jet's controls, his foot tapping against its base in a rhythm that matched his easy demeanor. Machi glanced over her shoulder, her hands deftly maneuvering the controls of the digital plane. "I wasn't scared, okay? It's just... that thing looked so freaky." Arjun snickered, his tone teasing. "That's what scared you?" The screen erupted in a flash of explosions as rockets tore through a plane, reducing it to flames. Across the arcade, someone cursed loudly, "Ah, damn it!" The corner of Machi's mouth quirked up in a sly grin, her fingers dancing over the controls with newfound confidence. "Nice job, Machi," Apricot cheered, her voice full of admiration. She and Selene watched as Machi expertly navigated the game's challenges, each move precise and controlled. Arjun let out a derisive snort. "Zink your hot stuff, Machi? Bet you can't beat me." "Arjun, let her enjoy the game," Selene chided gently, her voice carrying the warmth of someone used to calming tempers. Arjun rolled his eyes with an exaggerated sigh, slumping against the machine with a dramatic flair. Machi chuckled softly, her tone teasing. "If I beat you, it would be an embarrassment to the military. I mean, what kind of soldier can't even win an arcade game? Her playful jab earned a resigned sigh from Solène, who shook her head with a smile. Those two? Apricot muttered under her breath, shaking her head with a mix of exasperation and affection. Yeah, they're probably used to it by now, Solène agreed, her smile tinged with fondness. It's been a crazy week. Reports coming in left and right. The city's gone nuts. You don't say? Apricot's curiosity piqued, her mind racing to connect the dots, each piece of information a potential clue. Yeah, my poor baby's been coming home late every night, sometimes not at all, Arjun mused, his voice softening as he wrapped an arm around Solène's waist and pressed a kiss to her cheek. Leaves me all alone. Solène nodded, her expression heavy with the weight of responsibility. It's true, and although I'm not supposed to talk about it, there's been a string of murders all over the city. Then there was that bank robbery the other day, but you're already up to speed on that. Apricot felt her cheeks warm under Solène's softened gaze, the unspoken connection between them deepening. Listen, Apricot, what I'm about to tell you stays between us, okay? Off the record. Apricot's brow furrowed with concern, a knot of unease forming in her chest. Why are you telling me this? Something really disturbing came across my desk this morning, Solène continued, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. A singer was attacked backstage, her face chewed off by her own fans. The photos were horrific, and the report was full of holes. It was like they were under some kind of spell, acting like wild animals. Rumor has it, it might be an Arslan biological agent or something even worse. Apricot's stomach churned violently, the words, "Someone chews your face off," echoing ominously in her mind, a voice she could neither identify nor ignore. Did I really hear that? She wondered, her thoughts spinning out of control. That's horrifying, she mumbled under her breath, the image searing itself into her memory. No kidding. I'm never going to sleep tonight after that. The movie was bad enough, but now people are turning into monsters? Thanks a lot, Solène, Machi groaned, her voice muffled as she buried her face in her hands. Arjun shook his head, his tone dismissive. This is just war hysteria, nothing more. Arslana wouldn't risk releasing something like that here. Too dangerous. The war between Aslana and Castor is spilling over into Uchella, Apricot murmured, her gaze distant, her thoughts heavy with the weight of the world outside their small circle. Solène's concern deepened, her voice tinged with genuine worry. That reminds me, Apricot, you should think about changing your route home. If you ever need a ride, just call me or Arjun. We'll make sure you get home safe. Why do you say that? Apricot tried to laugh it off, but the unease clung to her like a shadow, dark and inescapable. Arjun shrugged, his gaze sliding away from hers. Just listen, all right? Okay, I will, Apricot promised, though the pit in her stomach refused to settle, the words sticking in her throat like a bad omen. Did you see or hear anything last Ventaro? Solène asked, her voice edged with tension, the question carrying more weight than it should. Apricot swallowed hard, her mind flashing back to the strange, unsettling encounter that had left her shaken. No, nothing like that, she lied, the words tasting bitter on her tongue, the memory too raw to share. Solène's gaze sharpened, a flicker of something dark and knowing in her eyes. Some bodies were found after people reported strange things. I don't know what's going on, but it's not normal. If anything weird happens, you call us, okay? Apricot nodded, her heart pounding with a fear she couldn't name. As she glanced beyond Solène, past the brightly lit arcade machines, she saw something. No, someone, moving in the shadows. A figure in a dark cloak, its twin horns curling in a way that defied nature, flickered just at the edge of her vision. Sure, Apricot replied, her voice distant as the shadow melted into the crowd, leaving her with a sense of unease that gnawed at her insides. "Mom, Dad, I'm home," Apricot called out as she kicked off her red and white sneakers, the familiar scent of home washing over her like a balm. She hurried upstairs, shutting her bedroom door behind her with a soft click, the world outside fading away as she entered her sanctuary. At her desk, she flipped open her laptop, her mind still buzzing with unease. "I need to find out more about these murders. Selene, what have you gotten me into?" The internet offered little solace. Government censors had scrubbed most of the information, and forums were being monitored, with posts disappearing almost as soon as they were made. Apricot's frustration mounted, her fingers drumming on the desk until her phone buzzed, drawing her attention. She swiped at the screen to find a message from Bonnie. "Hey girl, want to meet up at the park? I've got something to show you." The idea of meeting at the park so late made Apricot's skin crawl, but she couldn't bring herself to say no. She didn't want to admit she'd already been out with other friends. Against her better judgment, she typed back, "Sure." The park was a tapestry of shadows, each tree draped in darkness, its branches whispering secrets in the wind. Apricot's nerves were on edge with every crunch of leaves beneath her feet, her heart racing with each rustle that broke the silence. She scanned the area until she spotted Bonnie on a bench under a dim streetlight, the only figure in a sea of black. "Bonnie!" Apricot called out, her pace quickening with relief. "Thank God you're here. This place gives me the creeps." Bonnie uncrossed her legs, holding a magazine on her lap. Apricot's eyes were drawn to the title, Eerie Truths Monthly. Normally she would have rolled her eyes at such a publication, but tonight her curiosity got the better of her. "It's good to sit down. The train being out made the trip here a nightmare." "Tell me about it," Bonnie sighed, her voice heavy with the weight of a long day. "I would have come to your place, but I couldn't figure out a way, so I thought meeting here was easier." She lifted the magazine, her fingers flipping through the worn pages with practiced ease. "I wanted to show you this," she said, her voice chirping with excitement. "I know it's kind of a weird magazine, but," she paused, landing on a creased page, "this is what I've been talking about." The photos were grainy, the kind of images you'd expect from a cheap camera. Bonnie pointed to one of something, a figure, leaping from a building. Apricot's first instinct was to dismiss it as fake. "Bonnie, I get what you're—" she began, but Bonnie silenced her with a raised hand, her eyes wide with urgency. "Wait, just look." Bonnie flipped the page to reveal a high-resolution shot. The silhouette in the photo sent a chill down Apricot's spine. It was the same figure she'd seen floating over the city, its form unmistakable, its presence undeniable. "This thing isn't normal. They call him Claw Fingers. People have been seeing him everywhere, and the stories are getting darker. They say he offers power, but at a price." Apricot's throat tightened, panic clawing at her insides. She couldn't let Bonnie know she'd seen it too. "Bonnie, how long has this been going on?" she asked, forcing a lightness into her voice that felt foreign, strained. "Just a few months. I've been reading this mag for years, and it only showed up a couple of months ago. But that's not even the worst part." Bonnie flipped ahead to another page, the headline bold and chilling. "The Ikijoji Street Murderer." "Bonnie!" Apricot's voice was sharp as she shot up from the bench, fear twisting her insides like a knife. "Stop it! You've got to stop filling your head with this garbage. If you want to believe it, fine, but don't drag me into it." Her heart hammered in her chest, each beat echoing the terror rising within her like a tidal wave. Bonnie's expression crumbled, her gaze dropping to the ground, her voice small and wounded. "I thought you'd be interested," she whispered, the words barely audible. Apricot wrapped her arms around herself, trying to stave off the creeping chill that had settled into her bones. "It freaks me out, okay? I walk that street almost every night, and I don't want to hear about people getting butchered there. I've got enough on my plate with school and work. I don't need this too." Bonnie stood slowly, her face softening with understanding, her eyes filled with concern. I get it. It scared you. But listen, Appy, if you ever want to talk about these things, I'm here. Sure, Bonbon. Apricot sighed, the guilt gnawing at her insides like a hungry beast. Catch you later, okay? And, I'm sorry. You're right. It scares me. I don't like it. Bonnie gave her a brief, tight hug before stepping back, the warmth of her embrace lingering even after she let go. Bonnie hesitated, a slight smirk playing at her lips, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. Before I go, there's something else. I overheard the SDP police talking about that woman from the other day. They said bullets bounced off her because of some kind of spectral anomaly. They've never seen anything like it. Apricot's blood turned to ice as Bonnie continued, her tone growing more urgent. That's why they used that mech. They needed something powerful enough to break through whatever was protecting her. I know it's crazy, but Apricot, they're hiding something. I just thought you should know. Why tell me this? Apricot's voice shook, the weight of the revelation pressing down on her like a physical force, her mind reeling with the implications. I don't know, Bonnie admitted, her voice dropping to a whisper, the weight of her words settling like a heavy cloud. Just a feeling. Intuition, maybe. She shrugged, as if to brush off the severity of what she'd just said, the smirk fading from her lips. Anyway, it's late. We should go before someone gets the wrong idea. Apricot waved as they parted ways, her steps slow and heavy as she followed the winding path out of the park. The starless sky loomed above, a black void that seemed to swallow the world whole, the silence oppressive, suffocating. This is all getting too real, she whispered to herself. The sensation of unseen eyes following her every move lingering long after Bonnie had disappeared into the night.